Hello there, everyone, and welcome to Fired Up Funded. My name is Morgan McClintock, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Chris Albrick. Hello, Chris. How are you?
Hello, doing great.
So this is our new show, Chris. What are we going to talk about?
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, we're trying something new here in this series. We're going to be talking with startup CEOs or co-founders who just secured VC funding, and we're going to go deep into the details of not just the company and then what it does and who its competitors are, touch on all that, but we're going to dive into the nitty-gritty of the funding itself, like the firms, the personalities, the process, how the deal got done.
Yeah, so the first up here is a company called Projectworks, and they have just closed their Series A, $15 million. Congrats to them. And so we'll be talking to the CEO, Mark Orttung. And now Mark is a serial entrepreneur. He was the president of Bill.com. He was the CEO of a company called Nexient that he grew from, I think there were about 350 people. And then he scaled it up to be 1,200 people, and they sold it to Entity Data. He's a board director of multiple other companies, and he's just stepped into the CEO seat here at Projectworks. And they closed their Series A in June. And so we want to talk to him all about how did that deal go down? It's an international company, so there's some complexities involved. The VC was somebody he knew, but this is a commercial deal. You've got to know a little bit more than just somebody that you know. So how did that deal actually go down? So please join me in welcoming Mark Orttung, the CEO of Projectworks, to Fired Up Funded. Fired Up Funded, how startups closed their deals. Mark, great to see you. Welcome to Fired Up Funded. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on. Great to see you guys. How are you doing?
We're doing super well, and we're delighted to have you. And I'm really interested to hear about the deal. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Closed it in June. So just at the top of the show here, why don't you tell us a little bit about Projectworks? What does the company do? Who do you serve?
Yeah, we are a platform to run an SMB services company. So think an architecture firm, an IT services firm, an engineering firm. The common thread is that they all do project-oriented work. So they'll have a statement of work, they'll have a group of people over a few months or maybe a few years. And we really help them figure out which projects are profitable, who's assigned where, what's their utilization. We give them a real-time view so we can predict whether a project's going to be profitable or not. We also are the source of truth. So we do their time cards, their expense reports. That all leads to quite detailed invoicing. And then we connect all of that into their accounting system, QuickBooks or Xero. We also connect to their CRM, so either Salesforce or HubSpot. As deals get close to being sold, they come over to our platform. And all this is for SMB, so anywhere from maybe 10 employees up to about 500 employees.
So you've just raised, well, you tell me, why don't you walk me through the details of the round? Because as Morgan said, you've just raised and have big plans for that, for those new funds.
Yeah, so the total round is just north of 15 million US, and it came in across effectively a Series A we did last October, and then we extended it now. So it was about little north of 3 million in October, and then we added 12 million just recently. So the total round is now 15 million, a little north of 15 million.
So you were working again with Steve Piacker at 10 Coves Capital. You two are familiar with one another. And this is on the back of you joining Projectworks last year. So the company's been going for some time, and you've joined to lead the next phase of the Projectworks development. Talk a bit about that if you could.
Yeah, a couple things there. One, I'm really excited to be working with Steve again and with the whole 10 Coves team. They were involved in Bill.com while I was there. So Steve was on the board, got to know him quite well through that relationship. And the 10 Coves portfolio of companies is just a great fit for Projectworks. We can go into that in a little bit more detail. But I've been involved with Projectworks for coming up on 3 years. I've been on the board. And last year in March, I came aboard full time as CEO. So I felt like it was a real luxury to be on the board and know the company and know the people and kind of understand the challenges before I came aboard as CEO. Quite often, when you come aboard as CEO, you don't really know what you're getting, and it's often messy. I felt like this was a real gift in a way that it was not. It was, I could tell what was
Yeah.
happening. It was a great team, a great product, and just a giant market opportunity. And the market opportunity ties to something I had done in a prior role running Nexient. So we had this pain point of needing a platform to run our firm. We never found a good one, so we built our own. I wish I had found Projectworks because it would have been a lot better idea than building our own.
And you worked as a consultant yourself at a big firm early in your career.
Yeah, so I started my career at what became Accenture. Back then it was called Anderson Consulting. And I worked on a number of different sort of advanced technology groups. First, I worked on a piece of software that was part of their methodology for running giant engagements. So sort of the cookbook, if you will, for them to put in these 400 person teams and keep them all organized. And then I went off and I actually studied AI for a couple of years as part of a program they did, and then brought that back to the firm. And that was all in Chicago. And then I came back to Silicon Valley where I had gone to school and helped create a center there that was kind of connecting Accenture with Silicon Valley firms. And then I got the bug and it went off and started doing startups from there. But going through the classic training at Accenture, they really teach you how to run a consulting firm. And when I was running Nexient, I found myself hiring former Accenture people quite a lot. Most of my management team had gone through that same training. And it was a great playbook.
For those not familiar with Nexient, maybe say a bit about what kind of a consultancy that was.
Yeah, when I joined in 2014, we were primarily an agile engineering outsource that was 100% US. So we had all these people in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and we were outsourcing software development for Fortune 500 and large enterprise customers. Over the 7 years that I led it as an independent company, we really moved it from pure engineering to more of a product. So we added product management as a practice, we added user experience as a practice, and we started selling product teams rather than single engineers as what we went to market with. And it took me a few years. We screwed up a lot of things and sort of shrunk the company in the beginning. So we went from 39 million to 34 million over the first couple of years. And then we went from 34 million to 131 million over the next 5 to 7 years. So it was that part of the ride was more fun than the part.
And then they're getting smaller.
Yes, for sure.
And you eventually sold it to Entity Data. So
Yeah, we sold it in 2021 to NTT Data. And then it got merged into, they asked me to stay a couple of years. And I took Nexient and 4 other firms they purchased, and we made Launch by NTT Data. So it's a brand new brand, about 3,000 people. And Nexient, when we sold it, was about 1,100 people. And so it was about a third of what became Launch by NTT Data.
You've seen the consulting industry at its largest, you've seen it at its mid-size. One of the most distinctive aspects of Projectworks, from my perspective, is that it positions itself as a platform for specialist consultants. So, I was hoping you could talk a bit about like what kinds of firms or what size firms are we talking about? And it's interesting you mentioned AI. I mean, you were clearly onto that trend long before the current boom. But what makes this a moment for these smaller firms?
Yeah, for me, it actually started 2 companies ago when I was at Bill.com, and we sold to SMBs broadly. And I just really developed a passion for working with these small companies. They're just fun. You get people who are deep experts in some tiny little niche in the world. They have anywhere from 10, 20, maybe a few hundred people working there. So we've got firms that are doing all kinds of fantastic things. So one of our customers is an architecture firm that led the redesign of the Sydney Opera House. We have one called Groundline that helps power grid companies around the world. So think like your local power utility when they need to rebuild their network for either to make it more resilient for fires or more resilient to all the crazy things with batteries and cars and all the sort of changing needs of the power grid. These guys are engineers to help you design and implement that. Lots of great technology companies. We have the fastest growing IT consultancy in Australia as a customer. And the other thing that I really love about Projectworks is we got customers in 5 countries. So Australia, New Zealand, US, Canada, and the United Kingdom. So we've got just a great group of firms that are fun to work with. And they range anywhere from 10 or 20 people on the low end. Our largest is about 500 people.
Right. It's a great business. So Steve Piacca is the managing partner at 10 Coves, and you'd said, okay, he was on the board at Bill.com where you were the president. So you knew each other, and now you step in as the CEO of Projectworks. You said they did a raise of about $3 million. And then, okay, we want to move the company to be headquarters in the US. We want to tap into some US venture capital. Steve's on your list. But talk to us a little bit about how that deal went down, because presumably you don't just call up Steve and say, hey, I need $12 million to kind of grow this company just because you know each other. So talk to us about how the deal actually happened.
We've known each other a long time, as you said, but since we started talking about Projectworks, it was more than a year from chatting with him even before I fully decided to come on board as CEO. He was chatting with me about that decision because I had introduced the founders to him and they were talking to him prior to me coming aboard full time. So he liked the business, he liked the space. We did a lot of work right after I joined to really capture how big is our available market. And it's actually quite massive. If you look at all services companies in the globe, it's something like 20 million. And then you can dial down into, our 5 countries and the size, and then just pick 4 of the little sub-segments. So architecture, engineering, IT consulting, and management consulting. You still get 50 or 60,000 companies as just an initial piece to go after, and then much bigger market beyond that. And there is no winner. There are others in the market, but there's nobody right now that is the dominant player. It's mostly spreadsheets. So whenever we encounter a company, they almost always are using some timesheet tool and a bunch of spreadsheets. So working with Steve, we then, we got into the TAM, we got into what we thought this business could become. And then we actually did a lot of work a few months later internally on our strategy. So we built out our strategy to 2030, where we saw success, where we saw the company going and how we'd get there. So I just shared that with Steve as well. I was in New York. I went and visited. I said, hey, I've got this strategy. I'd love to show you. So in a way, it's a pitch, but in a way, it was just really sharing what we were doing inside the company and where we thought it could go. So all of that, I think, just helps build that relationship and build the comfort level that Steve and his 10 Coves team, he would have a lot of his team members would join on these various conversations.
Oh, right.
So 10 Coves as a firm became really knowledgeable about Projectworks and really knowledgeable about our space over a period of time. And also they could see how we operate and how we perform over a period of time. I think both of those things are pretty crucial. It's a challenging market out there right now for fundraising. And I think you've got to build these relationships over the long term. And you've got to really demonstrate kind of continued performance and improvement on your strategy and your plans and so forth.
So you had some time to sort of socialize the deal with them and for them to get to know you over a long period of time. And you're literally, maybe you thought there was going to be a deal there in the future, maybe there, and the same on their side, but maybe not. So it was like an extended honeymoon for this particular business. You've been successful before, and presumably Steve, but he also has the rest of the investment committee to sell into and bring on board. But it sounds like they too lent in on some of the sort of planning that the company was doing anyway.
Yeah,
is that right?
They did. And I had met a number of them at various meetings. So this year they did a day for the executives in the portfolio companies, and they brought a number of people. So for example, they brought Mark Orttung in to talk about his go-to-market fit, his product market fit, and his whole sort of science of scaling concepts. So that, I've been to meetings like that with them. And at those meetings, you get a chance to meet the whole broader team there, as well as some of the other leaders of the portfolio companies. And all of that was really helpful for me to get comfortable that they were a great community and a great team that were going to help us grow.
One of the slightly unusual things about this deal is that you did do like an earlier raise, and then sort of technically this later part sort of boosted this extra 12 million, bringing up to 15 for the A, was a sort of almost an extension. Tell us a little bit about how that came about and why did you do that?
Nike or two prior investors led that as an inside round. And that was just, for us, the easiest and so the best thing to do at the time was to give ourselves some runway to go out and find an outside funder. When Steve came in with 10 Coves, he said, why don't we reopen that and extend it? Technically, the prior round did not have a separate class of shares. It now does. So everyone that invested in that 3 million last October got pulled into the 15. So it is all one round, all one class of shares, all 15, slightly more than 15 million comes together as the Series A. Yeah, it's a great question. We were last year bringing the company to the US. So it had been founded in New Zealand. It was a limited New Zealand company. We created a US holding company, which is now the main company. So we're a Delaware corporation like everyone else in the US. Nobody's been to Delaware, but we're all Delaware corporations. So we have a holding company, and then we have an operating company in the US, and then now the New Zealand limited company is an operating company under the holding. So putting all of that together, just in the end of 2024, we did a 3 million, 3.3 million US round that was all inside. So that was Bridgewest and Punakaiki, or two prior investors, led that as an inside round. And that was just, for us, the easiest and so the best thing to do at the time was to give ourselves some runway to go out and find an outside funder. When Steve came in with 10 Coves, he said, why don't we reopen that and extend it? Technically, the prior round did not have a separate class of shares. It now does. So everyone that invested in that 3 million last October got pulled into the 15. So it is all one round, all one class of shares, all 15, slightly more than 15 million comes together as the Series A.
So clearly this wasn't your first rodeo, but at the same time, this was your first, even if it's a small multinational, it's your first multinational experience. So I imagine there are some lessons learned there.
So many things were different and more complex because of that. So for example, the prior rounds had all been done as New Zealand rounds under New Zealand law. New Zealand securities law is slightly different than the US. So the way options work is different. The way the shares work is different. So as we brought it into the US, we did an exchange. So everybody who had previously owned New Zealand shares now owns part of a class of shares in the US company. But we had set that up to try to make sure it didn't disadvantage them in any way within the New Zealand environment. But then as we're doing this new round, it's all in the US. So we're just learning a lot about that. Some examples as well of running a multinational, even though we're a relatively small one. We need to have experts helping us figure out our transfer tax approach. We need to figure out where our intellectual property lives. And everything we do is in multi-currency, but we have both revenue and expenses across 5 countries and 5 different currencies, 4 of which are all called the dollar, right? So it's quite confusing. So it's been fascinating to learn about all these different pieces and figure out how to get it done. We would have our counsel in the US engage our New Zealand counsel quite frequently during this process. So we'd have to just go get an opinion because the people in the US don't necessarily know the New Zealand law at the level of detail they need to.
Right. Because presumably the sort of shareholders in New Zealand who have vested in the company, and now you're transferring them into US shares, you don't want to create some kind of taxable event for them because they're being given it. And so you have to, this is the detail that you've got to work out when you're doing a deal like this. So that all the staff are not suddenly like, okay, the good news is we've got money, and the bad news is you've all got an income tax bill on the new shares I just gave you.
Yeah, they're almost opposite. If you look at the US, we sort of try to convert everything, like people try to buy their options so that they become a long-term capital gain instead of ordinary income. New Zealand doesn't really have capital gains taxes in the same way that we do. So it's, it's quite a different scheme. And so, it's just, you really need experts on both sides to help you figure out what's the right thing to do to optimize for people.
Structurally, just from a business point of view, a lot of things you have to think about in bringing on or sort of transferring to a US based style of funding. From a product and market point of view, how does you're making a push now, right, into the United States? Part of what this funding is going to go to is to ramp up activity in the US. How do you see the US market differing, if at all, from the ones that Projectworks has traditionally played in?
So at the highest level, the good news is we see it operate in the same way. And so, for example, a consulting firm in the US that works on statements of work and projects, all of the core processes, all of the core metrics are the same, and it works really well. And there have definitely been products kind of adjacent to us where that was not true. Xero is probably the best example, where they are the dominant player in Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. The way the US payroll taxes work and the way the US income taxes work for corporations, their product didn't really work for that. And so they really struggled to get adoption here initially. We don't have that problem. So that's awesome. There are smaller nuances. So who we need to integrate to, some of the tools here, for example, for payroll are different than they are in Australia or New Zealand or the UK. But they're really minor differences. The core product works well. And so we're really excited about that. And we feel it's not even just these 5 countries, but literally any country around the globe we'll be able to go into, and the core product is going to be a good fit for consulting firms. So that was great to be able to confirm that. And we see the US market as just a huge market for us, and great early reception as we've been working on it the last 6 to 12 months. Lots of new US customers, and we're excited. Yeah, a lot of room to grow here.
Yeah. Are the verticals with the most opportunity for growth, are those the same in the United States as they are in, say, New Zealand?
Yeah, I think so. There's always little, like in the US, I'd say there are more subsegments. So
Mm,
when you think about a management consultant, so a boutique management consultant is really a group of nerds who are really good at some very tight niche, right? So we have one
Yeah.
example. It's a group of people there's like 30 of them, and they're really good at applying technology to insurance underwriting. So if you're a large insurance company and you're going to undertake a technology upgrade on your underwriting, you call these people because they've done it dozens of times and they
Right.
just have all the experience, right? But they're not like a McKinsey that's just like a broad management consultant. They're sort of business consultants
Yeah.
on one niche area. And so in the US, I'd say those niches can be more narrow just because the market's bigger. So like everywhere, they're pretty narrow, but they can be even more narrow in the US is one of the things we're
Yeah.
discovering.
Because you get a bigger market, you can get
Yeah.
more niche players. And that's very much a strategy for consulting companies here. So you close your Series A company is closed. What are you planning to do with the funds now?
Yeah, we're excited about this part. This is the fun part of
That's
raising.
right.
Yeah, so a few things. One, we are expanding our product development team broadly.
Okay.
So product management, engineering, testing, roughly by 50%. So that will give us a lot better velocity to
Okay.
pursue all the things we want to add to the platform. And there's lots of things that we want to add and that our customers are asking for. That's one. Two, we're expanding our market capabilities. So we're expanding the team. We've built up our demand gen team. We've built up a presence in London. So we've hired a couple of people in London. We have north of 50 customers there without really having a sales presence previously. And so we feel that it's almost in spite of our approach. If you want to talk to us, you need to get one of our West Coast US reps to wake up early. So now we will have people in the time zone willing to talk to you any time of day. And so we're excited about that. And we think there's just huge upside for us there. And then we're building out our customer success team as well. So we recently added a new leader, Dennis Reno, who's got lots of great experience. He used to run customer success for the Xbox. He led customer success for Oracle's top customers. So great experience. And we're excited to build out our sort of post-sale engagement with our customers. And Dennis is taking the lead on that. So yeah, so we're excited about both product, customer success, and the go-to-market scaling up.
So you managed to get through that whole answer without mentioning AI. but I'm going to imagine that, congrats. So I'm going to imagine that AI is on the agenda though, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We had previously already been working on some AI things even before the round. We've got some of the engineering team are quite skilled in AI. And so we've been building proofs of concept and prototypes. A first thing that we'll begin to really bring to market is around proposals and winning new work for our firms. And we think it's just a natural fit with large language models and how that works. But then it's also really valuable to integrate directly into our core platform. So when you win a new project that you've built with us, it'll just flow seamlessly into our platform. So we're most of the way through building that out, and we're excited to talk about that in more detail, probably about a quarter from now.
Looking at the testimonials of customers who've used Projectworks and are loving it, one of the things that keeps coming up is just what a clean fit the product is to their workflow. So I'm sort of wondering if it's possible to generalize. You were talking about the sales team being available in the UK and, no one needing to get up early on the West Coast to field customer questions or real questions from potential customers. When you're in those initial conversations with consultancies, what are the big things they're trying to get clear on about Projectworks and that your sales, what are the big questions your salespeople are answering?
I think a lot of it is eye-opening when we're in those early conversations. Most of these firms are not doing a very good job of running their back office. They do a great job of their billable work. They make, world-changing things happen for their clients, and then they run out of time. And so they don't make world-changing things happen for their own process and their own technology.
100%.
So just seeing that we can give them real-time visibility and forward-looking visibility on, will this project be profitable? Which of my team is most profitable? Who's utilized? When do I run out of sold work? And I really need to get new contracts in before my bench fills up. All of that, they have at best sort of a bad view of it. And many of them just don't know. They can't tell you which projects are profitable, which clients are profitable before we come in. Yeah. So, and then there's just so many more pieces to the platform once they get onto the core that they can just kind of keep adding more and more capability. It really makes it powerful. And I think one of the strengths of Projectworks, as a group of the people working here, we have more than 150 years of experience in consulting. So it's built by people who've done the job, and there's sort of a real passion for that. And that really comes through in the DNA of the product. We get comments on that all the time. When I'm doing a first demonstration, people will stop me and say, "Oh, that thing you just showed me, I can tell you've had my job before because you wouldn't have thought of putting that in." That happens a lot. So yeah, it's great to see that.
You made an important point a little ways back there, which was that your average person would expect management consultants to run their businesses with absolute clockwork precision, but that sounds like that's not the case necessarily.
It's absolutely not the case. I've yet to meet one that really has their own, when they're in the sort of, 10 to 100 employee range, almost never do they have their shop in order.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, they're doing the right thing. Like when I was at Accenture, it was pounded into your head, you should be billable. And if you're not billable, you're a loser. That was like culture. And it's correct. Like if you're a consultant, you should be doing client work. And so, especially in a small firm, you're pretty lean. You don't have a lot of extra room for people that aren't doing billable work. You should be doing billable work, but you just run out of time and you don't. It's the shoemaker's kids have terrible shoes, right? Like you just don't get around to dealing with it. And that's why a platform like Projectworks is such a great fit. We can automate a lot of these pieces. And so you're not putting a lot of hours into it, but you're getting the visibility you're getting. But it's a pretty classic problem. If you talk to anybody running a firm, you almost never get things are good. Oh yeah, we got that worked out.
They go into it because they love doing the work. They don't want to be doing the sort of internal mechanics of what billable hours do I have and who's got spare capacity and what's my bill rate and all that stuff. That's not what they love doing. They love
Yeah.
implementing the new underwriting software for this insurance company. That's the thing that they do. And this other stuff is sort of a necessary evil. And so if you can accelerate that and make that easier, then great, because that's not something that they went into the business wanting to do. And so as you look forward here, you're thinking about, all right, there's lots of companies to go after. There's a clear need. Obviously, we're competing with Excel, which is just so many companies who compete with that. But what are the sort of challenges that you see coming up?
I think for us, it's just moving as fast as we can. The market changes, the technology changes are just coming really quickly. I mean, I'm sure everybody's experiencing it. So getting AI into our product in a way that we kind of keep up with the latest model and we get it really tuned to be in our domain and really a good fit. Those things we just got to move fast. And so that's probably the theme. Most of our challenges will come around just moving as fast as we can.
So are you seeing any effect on your customers? I mean, you're a SaaS platform, so I don't imagine that like tariffs have much of an effect on you. But in terms of if the overall sort of tumultuous economic climate might be freezing decisions or just kind of creating friction, are you seeing that at all with your customers?
Interestingly, we get a kind of global view. So right now in New Zealand, for example, the economy isn't that great. It's for a number of reasons. They, about a year ago, had a new government come in, lowered investment from government in lots of infrastructure projects, which led to a lot of engineering and consulting firms having less market to sell to, right? And so, which is all before and unrelated to the tariffs and all that stuff. It's just they were in their local economy having a bit of a downturn. So we definitely feel each economy is different. Australia is a bit the opposite. They're investing quite a bit in their net zero transition. So there's a lot of work going on across all kinds of engineering and planning and architecture to make that happen. Yeah, it's fascinating getting a view into these 5 different markets and how they're playing. We don't see, in the US, we haven't seen a lot of hesitation. Most of these smaller consulting firms seem to be, like, at least the ones we're dealing with, maybe, our sample size is small. So maybe it's like sort of biased towards the ones that are not seeing a challenge, but we're not seeing a lot in the US. That's a slowdown or a challenge.
That's definitely fair. You probably do have a bias towards companies that are scaling and realizing, we need to smooth out our operations here because otherwise we're going to bump into capacity issues or billing issues or profitability issues. So let's finally grab hold of this problem.
Yeah, one of the common themes, our customers grow at about 20% a year.
Yeah.
And generally these consulting sort of vertical industries grow 5 or 6% a year. So they're growing above market on average.
Right. So they're bumping into the scaling problems that you address. So just as we wrap here, I want to sort of see if you've got any sort of final advice that you have for other entrepreneurs who are out there raising funds. In your instance, it really helped that you had a pre-existing relationship here. So, top of the show, hey, it's great if you know a bunch of VCs and you've worked with them before. But for people who maybe are not in that position, who are maybe raising for the first time or just sort of building, what advice have you got?
I do think it's quite possible to build those long-term relationships. So for example, we have a pretty good runway. We've got a couple of years of runway before we do a Series B. But I still talk to investors who are interested because I get a lot of inbound. And there's sort of a weird thing. When you raise, then immediately a lot of investors come ask you about it. And I'm talking to all of them because I want to get to know which ones could be a good fit. How does their model work? What kind of investment size do they like to have? At what stage? And then narrow it down to the ones that seem like they would be a good fit in a couple of years and start building that relationship. So that's what I would say is like invest in the relationships over the long term. And that'll be, hopefully will be very helpful for us in a couple of years when we go to raise the next round.
That's brilliant advice, taking the long-term view there. So Mark Orttung is the CEO of Projectworks, which is a project intelligence platform for consulting businesses. Mark, great to catch up with you. Thank you for sharing all of this advice. If people want to reach out to you, where should they go?
Best place to find me is on LinkedIn. And so just reach out there. And thank you for having me. It's been great to be on the show.
Well, we've loved having you. Thank you for sharing all your advice. And we'll talk to you again soon.